Okay, I think we're good. You good?
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been really nice now that the DVD is out and I'm able to be shipping. And and
Good.
and it's so nice when fans like post a picture of the DVD and say
Yep.
how much they like it or why they like it. It's yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a long
No,
way.
that is nice. I've seen some of them on Twitter and I've liked them a lot. I've liked their response.
Yeah, I know. I think we can take this further.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see after this in terms of distribution if anybody's interested. I mean, there's a lot of
Sure.
ways to do this, but I think just getting it out to the fans was,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think so too. Um, I saw, they did a documentary on Bill Finger on Netflix that I thought was so good, and something like that. If we could get that, that'd be great. But you'll just have to find what works best for you.
yeah. I mean, the media can be remixed in another way to be longer, or I don't know. I'd be happy to come back for additional shoots as soon as
Yeah.
as long as you're there. I'd be glad to.
Yeah. I may be out of talking about myself. I don't know what else to say.
Well, okay. So we want to tell people that this documentary, All Hail the
Yeah,
Power.
you're blurry. I
Blurry?
see you, but you're blurry.
Oh,
Yeah.
huh. Well, I'm okay on my side, but all right, we'll handle it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Like, why should
ahead.
this go
We,
any
we can
easier?
make it work.
I mean, honestly, I thought the production was just something I couldn't handle because it was so hard. But then I rewatched Burden of Dreams after like 20 years, which I had always thought was like a really
Yeah.
complimentary documentary on Herzog, whereas watching it now, I see it was kind of a scathing, like, yeah, it's interesting. And the thing is, they were really close friends, Les Blank, and so I guess like picking at each other, like you talk about with Hap Leonard or any of your.
Right.
So how's the Moon Lake? Is it Moon Lake?
Well, you never can really tell when you're first rolling them out, but you hope it's doing well. There seems to be real good response from the people that are ordering it. There've only been like a couple of reviews, but there are a couple big ones set up that are forthcoming, and it's just probably about time for those to start rolling out. The two that have come out have been excellent. So, so far so good.
I'm sure they'll all be good. Yeah, we got more.
Or as some people say, so good so far.
I'm sure it'll be fine. That was really interesting that you posted. I love your weekly, post of a story for 7 days. I think it's wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Post them, and it was really interesting reading the original piece you wrote about the drive-in that got you.
Yep.
Make them saying you can make a novel out of this, and you're like, I need a novel, so.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. Pat Labruto is really to blame for the drive-in being written. Pat was an editor at Doubleday that I liked very much, and he bought my first hardback, which was The Magic Wagon, and then after that he bought this book, and he only bought a couple of anthologies that I edited as well. But he bought this book, which was originally a Doubleday book, and somewhere in my files, I actually have a hardback pages that for the drive-in that never happened. They were loose pages, but they were made up like the book. And back then, I don't even think there might have been an ARC for it. I don't remember if there was or not. But what I would say is that I've got these big pages for this Doubleday book, not Bantam, which is what it appeared in. So that unto itself is in my files, probably at Texas State University or somewhere in my files as I gradually moved those things to Texas State. But then it moved to Bantam books when Bantam became, and Doubleday all became part of Bertelsmann. And so then it came out as a paperback, was given the axe in about 2 weeks, you know, and yet by that time people were starting to read it and go, hey, this is pretty cool, you know. So I remember that history with Pat, and I've always you know, appreciated him coming to me and saying, can you write a book based on this article that you wrote? And that's how the drive-in happened. So I owe a lot to Pat as far as the drive-in goes.
Pat Labruto. Yeah.
Pat Labruto, great guy.
Yeah.
He's no longer in publishing in the houses, but he is an independent editor.
Oh, awesome. Well, the one thing I've learned about this business is you kind of got to be fluid, because there's so many ways of getting stuff out. You kind of got to be like open to opportunities, you know, not be fixed on one platform or something, you know. So
yeah, well, I think that's true now. Back then there weren't many platforms like this.
Right.
There were actually, in some ways it was better from book standpoint. It was better because there were tons of houses and you could go to different houses. There, you didn't have the computer where people just look at the computer. They don't look at any considerations for what was going on during the book. So like, you know, if you look at the period of COVID and you look and go, oh, well, that book didn't sell much, it probably won't sell again. Well, then you're not adding in that aspect of it. Or if you look at it and go, oh man, that went through the roof, and then you realize that was the only, you know, major book that came out that month. I mean, so there's all these different factors that are involved that are a little bit different than when I started. I straddled that whole period, you know, between Lawrence Block and Stephen King, you know, and so did Stephen King, of course. He straddled it before he was Stephen King, but we were kind of you know, those last dregs of that particular kind of publishing. Well, with King being actually a little older than me, I think he published in more men's magazines than I did, but he kind of broke that mold, and that began to change how publishing was done, for better and for worse. You know, it wasn't Stephen's fault or plan to do that, but it worked out well for him and worked out well for a lot of other people and worked out poorly for some, but that's the way it always is.
Yeah. So, but I think now, like, there are more ways to get your work out there to reach people, without having to go through all those other people. You know, you can do direct.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You know, but used to one of the both advantages to that and disadvantages. One of the disadvantages to that is that anybody can publish a book or make a film, which is a good thing. But anybody can publish a book or make a film is a bad thing, because you have nobody, you know, looking at it and going, oh, this book sucks, or this book, you know, so on and so on. People aren't vetted. I mean, you've been around a long time, you're vetted, you've done your stuff, but there's, and like I say, I'm certainly not against, you know, small publishing or self-publishing or any of that. But what I'm saying is that if any, you know, you look at it like this way, if any asshole can print something, it doesn't mean it's good. But on the other hand, it doesn't mean it's bad, but it means the percentage of bad is going to be a lot higher, because it's somebody that wants to print their book of their, you know, they've had this dream book all their life, but they can't write. And, or they've had a dream book all their life that might be good if there was some editor looking at it and vetting it and saying, hey, maybe you ought to lean in this direction. And you know, I think that's it, is that, you know, it's unfortunate, and you don't want to judge everything on money, but when people are willing to pay you money for it, it sort of elevates the opportunity for it to have worth, where then if you just publish it yourself, because you can publish anything if you pay for it yourself.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, you know, for me, I was talking about like film and stuff, and like you being able to post, you know, your weekly story. You know, that it's out, you know, I mean, I saw.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know? And you know, before that, it was on the, before that, it was on the website.
Sure.
And the website, you know, had attendance, but now with the fan page, you got a lot more people seeing it. And sometimes it'll jump to Twitter, and, you know, people will find it there and go, oh, okay, and look at it. So, I mean, it's like I said, it's always a trade-off.
I am.
Ah, got your good shirt on.
I got the good shirt on. I bought 2 of them when they went on sale. Come back and shoot you, because they brought the Redlands back, right? as a drive-in?
They're supposed to. I don't know if it's actually back yet. I heard they were going to, but I haven't heard another word about it lately.
Well, let's face it, you know, we're talking not till fall, maybe, you know, any traveling.
Sure.
I think.
Well, you know, the drive-ins do well in the summer in the old days, you know, and in the fall and the winter, you got a lot of rain, you know, especially in East Texas. But on the other hand, drive-ins used to do pretty well year round. But a lot of that's, you know, changed. I don't know how well they'll do. I think the novelty aspect of it will help. It just depends. I think drive-ins and independent films in general, be they indoor or outdoor, are hard to maintain anymore. I mean, I miss going to the movies. I really miss going to theaters, and I'm about to start back soon, you know. But the problem is now, even though I like a good superhero movie all the time, I mean, I'm now and again, I don't want to see it all the time. I want something else on the screen. And now I get that through streaming, or I get it through movies that appear on Netflix, Prime, whatever, you know, the outlet is. And some of them are a lot more adult and a lot better. And it's not to say that as an adult, I can't enjoy superhero movies. I'm a big fan of DC Comics.
The animated series.
That's right. And so I love all that. But, you know, and Batman, of course, was a TV release. And but the thing is that it's I wish the big theaters would bring back other kinds of films. But the reason they don't is obvious. They're not making any money. There's not enough people going unless they are those blockbuster sort of, you know, superhero films.
You know, you really have to go to the smaller festivals to see anything. Although, like,
Yeah,
Joe Bob Briggs is doing, they were letting all the people in the mutant community just submit their films, and he's going to do, you know, like a 2 or 3 day drive-in marathon in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
But I submitted the doc. I thought, like, you want to talk about the drive-in? It might not be, you know, what he's looking for, but I did submit it. So
yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, but the thing with all of these different outlets is that it's just like every generation has a different way of looking at things. But I do miss the days when there were tons of markets for writers coming up, because now so many of them are, you know, everybody thinks everything ought to be for free.
yeah, I know.
You know, that's become the worst evolution over time due to technologies. Everything ought to be free. They get used to getting this for free. What do you mean I have to pay for a book? I mean, we had people actually on Twitter one time trying to argue that why would we have copyrights? It should be free for everybody. And you know, it's just ridiculous.
Again, I saw somebody saying, you know, and that the you know, the legal rights to it should only be to the creator and not to his family. And that's like, screw you. That's how they support their family. I mean, it's their work, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, I can understand when people are dead and it's been a long time. I mean, I get it. But on the other hand, you know, I worked hard and I want to pass this on to the possibilities of it. And it may, you know, you don't know, but I pass it on to my kids. And they'll say, well, your kids are freeloading. And I thought, well, if they're living off royalties that by then will be based on novels written many years ago, they're going to be very lucky. I mean, I do pretty well. And if the royalties were kind of like this, great, they get it, but they're my kids. And the other part of it is they're not living off of it. They've got their own careers.
Yeah, no.
But part of my life is to pass that on to them for whatever it's worth, you know?
Yeah, no, it's your work and you created it, and it should be your family.
Right.
You know, I think that's fair.
Right.
There's a little weird.
Yeah, and I have some charities that I give to, and some things I would like to make sure have some, you know, life after me.
Sure. And I know libraries and stuff, and, you know, all the support you've given the horror community.
Ooh.
Hey, what's happening with Nikon? Right? Is it happening this year? Is it digital? Is it? We don't know.
I think it's been moved to next year, though I think they may have something online this year. I'm no longer sure. It's changed so much I can't keep up with it. We are doing the StokerCon this week, and I'm going to be online Thursday and Friday, I think.
Cool.
At least Thursday and Friday, yeah.
Okay. StokerCon. Okay, I'll look it up. Cool.
I'm doing a reading. I'm doing a panel, a couple of panels. Yeah. I haven't figured out what I'm going to read yet. I'm going to read something.
So
So-
I don't know.
Sometimes what you pick to read, sometimes what you pick to read to an audience might be different because you know, you want something that's lively and fast, and they give you got essentially you got 45 minutes, but by the time you get in, start reading, and the time you try to answer, if you got about 30 minutes maybe, you know, which is good.
Yeah.
It's about right.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I know when I run interviews, you know, more than like 40 minutes, like people aren't going to watch the whole, you know, it's,
No,
you know, I think
right.
short attention span these days, you know.
Yeah, well, you know, I wanted to say congratulations on All Hail the Popcorn King. Even though it's about me, it's your film, and you've worked really, really hard on it. You know, I would have got bored with me and gone home, but I think that you've done an extremely good job of sticking with it, marketing it, getting it edited, doing all these different things. It's been quite an accomplishment, and I think it just sets the table now for bigger and more expansive films. You know, they may still be done out of your house, they may be done out of your trips and with the camera. That's great, but I think that this one, you really kind of opened some doors for yourself, I think, and not because of me, but because of you and what you did and how hard you worked at it. I think that had you chosen any other subject, it would have been the same. You were able to connect, you were able to get people interested, you were able to show that all of this stuff you had done over the years was paying off, and that now you had reached that point when you're turning an even larger corner, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely like my biggest and you know, my best accomplishment so far. I'm glad it's about
Yeah.
you, and I'm glad we got to hang out so much.
Well, thanks.
You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I know. I appreciate it.
yeah, I look forward to, you know, seeing you again and coming back to Nacogdoches and visiting everybody.
Yeah, it'd be great when things are back to normal, and they're a little better. There certainly are better. There's no doubt that there's a trend towards the better. You know, my wife and I, Karen, the bear, we traveled for the first time in quite some time and went out to see Casey and Jonathan's new house. You know, my daughter and her boyfriend's new house, and we stayed out there a week because, you know, we were all vaccinated, and you know, flying turned out to be not the nightmare I expected. Everything was very organized. We had on our mask, and, you know, we got on the plane. The air was, you know, they filter the hell out of it, and it was just a far more pleasant experience than I feared. You know, I thought there would be tons of people and lots of people having to go through you know, checkpoints where you're checking to see about the disease, and, you know, they're making sure you're okay. But, you know, we had vaccination cards. They didn't even ask for them, coming or going,
Really?
because I think they're at the point where they go, yeah, Karen had it in her wallet, was trying to give it to them, and they were going, no, we don't need that. So, you know, they did, but it was a far more pleasant experience. Yeah, and we actually went to a restaurant out, you know, where you go in, you have your tables segregated, so to speak, or separated from others, and you know, we wore our mask in and took them off to eat, and then put them back on, and, you know, you're at that point. I mean, the air doesn't care if you're eating lunch, but it will transfer disease anyway. But when you're that far apart and you're with all a table full of vaccinated people, it gives you a sort of feeling of greater freedom than you've had for over a year now.
Yeah, my daughter just came home for the first time since the lockdown in last March, and I mean, she wanted to test it out to see about bringing the grandkid, because she wanted to see what New York,
Yeah,
you know, what shape New York was in. So she came in, and of course, you know, being from New York, she just missed home, and then had to eat like
yeah,
Chinese food and Thai food and all the things like.
yeah.
But
No, I understand that.
so
And, you
nice
know,
to have
we
her.
went to we went to Santa Clarita, and we had fun because there's wild turkeys that run around in Casey's yard and everybody else's yard.
I saw
There's
that.
like these
We're
turkeys.
trying
They're
to
like,
ducks.
yeah, they're like the bullies of the neighborhood, you know. They're like a gang of turkeys.
Well, it looks great. Her house looks lovely, and she looks really happy. Her little
It's
puppy,
nice
her
house.
little puppy is ridiculously cute.
Yeah, little puppy. That's right. Leo. You know, he likes just a ball of fur, a little ball.
You can't be a Lansdale unless you have a dog.
Yeah, you're right. Right. Nikki wouldn't know what that was. He would think, doesn't that need a mop handle in it?
Yeah, he'd probably be scared of it. He's like,
He probably would. He probably would.
what is that?
He, he's gotten a little braver as he's gotten older. The rabbits don't intimidate him anymore,
Oh,
but
good.
they'll sit out in the yard. They'll sit out in the yard 6 feet from him. I got him on the leash, and they're just sitting there. They're just kind of like.
But he doesn't freak out anymore. He's okay with them.
Once in a while, he'll kind of rush at them a little bit, and then they'll do a little hop over to the side. But they know he's on the leash. But he's gotten older. He's gotten a little braver, you know, but not much. Not much.
He's the baby of the family, you know.
He is. He's a 7-year-old baby.
Well, I know you have work to do, so I just wanted to let people know what you thought about the film, and of
I
course.
was very happy with the film. I like I said, I thought you did a good job, but I also, it meant a lot to me because I don't think about myself, with any great determination of my importance in literature or film or whatever. But, when you see something like that, you say, well, you know what, at least I'm appreciated. And that's a lot of it. You want to be appreciated, and you want to know that you've done good work, at least, a marginal part, or maybe a larger than marginal part. So for me, that was a great moment. And seeing people that I cared about on the film or hearing their voices on the film, that was really, really nice, And so I appreciate that from you. And it is sort of like one of the ultimate gifts in my life. And I'll never forget that. I mean that in a real way. It's like a major gift to me that I never expected or even considered or thought of. And but people say, I have a friend that always said, when people start paying attention to you and think you're important, it's just because they think you're going to die.
No. Like I said, you can fight time. I know you.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna fight it best I can. No, I'm very active and
You're healthy.
I have
Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Take care of myself. I got my exercises today, and and Karen and I do. We do I do walking outside. She does a treadmill, and I lift light weights, and I still teach martial arts at least once a week, and which I've gone back to now. I can go back and do that because I've got a class that are all prepared for all this, and so I mean it's fun, and I've got so many projects, and I feel like I'm changing gears again, which is always an exciting thing for me.
Yeah, it feels like that too. I think a lot of people would kind of feel that way around the pandemic, just because that year of kind of isolation, sort of set you on maybe a new path. I feel like, I'm looking at my life options differently.
Yeah, it could be. I think that could well be it. But I've found that probably every 7-8 years or something, I go through a transition as a writer. I don't change much in what I'm doing in life, but I go through this transition as a writer, and sometimes it's more subtle, and then other times it's more blatant. But I can feel it in myself. I developed new interests. Like, I love horror fiction, but I don't sit around and watch horror films all the time, nor read horror fiction all the time. I've read a ton of it. I've seen a ton of it, but probably by the end of the 80s, it became one of the more limited areas of my interest, but that doesn't mean it doesn't stay steady within, my life, nor does it not mean that it might not become more prominent over time again. Don't know. I don't plan like that.
I mean, my documentaries sort of follow my obsession. So like, and you have to, I've realized from what happened on my first film, like I spent 10 years working on it. And,
right.
That's way too long to be immersed in one subject. I found like I was starting to hate
I believe it is. Yeah.
But ours was a joy, and I would come back anytime and do a sequel.
Right. Well, I know it took a while, but all in all, for an independent film, it didn't really take that long, because most major films take a year, and you're having to work with a shoestring, and you're having to do a little here, a little there. You've got other things going on in your life. You've got to keep making a living and taking care of yourself, and all that takes time. So I think it went very fast. I do think that I've had writers that would spend 10 years on the book, and sometimes it was, well worth it. It was really good, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's no better than if they just spent 2 years on it. What it is they spent 8 years fucking around, That's what happened.
Well, I think too, when you let it go, as soon as they sent me the DVD boxes, and I was terrified suddenly, because then it meant now I'm committed to this, and people are going to see this, and
yes,
that's just me questioning, my own abilities.
Well, we all do that some. I mean, I'm not somebody who spends an inordinate amount of time worrying about what I've done. I'm more interested in what I'm going to do, But yeah, but of course, everybody thinks, well, gosh, I hope I did a good job, because I write for myself when I write, but when I'm done, I'm hoping people like it, of course, because you're hoping there are other people who are like you, because you're writing for yourself, you're creating for yourself, and then you hope other people will share your interests, your approach to the subject, or how you did it. But you can't live on that, because sooner or later you're going to be disappointed, or they're going to be disappointed. And if you do that, I mean, those kind of regrets, they're like farts. You can't get them back. You're done. So and sometimes they're not right, and sometimes they're very right.
When calling ends, that was I'm still thinking about maybe the next DVD will be a different mix. There's this thing about not letting go of it. You want to keep fixing it. When you finish a story, do you just know it's done, or?
Yeah, I never want to do it again. I mean, in some ways, there's a part of me that would like another crack at all of them, because I probably could do it better. But there's another part of me that knows better. There's a part of me that knows I did the best I could at the time, and that if I go in there and try to fix it, I'm going to ruin it. Now, if something's being reprinted, I find misspelled words, or an ill sentence, or something has gone awry, I don't mind touching it up. That's different. But as far as Dean Koontz took a lot of his early novels and totally rewrote them. Well, I don't have that kind of urge, and it's sort of like, let's make these different, or let's make these new, or let's make these within the concept of who I think I am now. And it's not a thing wrong with that if that's what people want to do. I'm just saying I don't have either that kind of patience nor that kind of will. Also, I think I did what I could at the time. There are some things I just don't reprint because I don't think they're worth reprinting. And there are some things that I'm not that fond of, but people seem to respond to them so well, I keep them in print. And I'm talking about short stories in particular, but some novels.
So I also want to ask you, because I've gotten very involved in the Jorah Lansdale collecting group on Facebook, because they're always with all your different, and so when did that start happening? You started doing these different editions and special editions. Was that early on?
In the 80s, 1980s. I've been doing them all my career. I've always had what I thought were three major spokes of my career and a couple of minor ones. And the major spokes are all within the idea of writing for publication. But I had a major spoke was that I wrote for the mainstream publishers like Doubleday and Bantam and Knopf and Vintage and Mulholland and lots of others along the way. But I called that the central spoke, because I was writing things I wanted to write, but I was writing things too that sort of fit within a more generalized market than, say, Dead in the West, right, or things of that nature. And even the DriveIn's kind of a slipstream. It comes over from the other side. But then I had this side where I wrote you know, the offbeat stuff, often, you know, short stories and or things that would not be published by a major press, but a small press was excited about it, you know. And then I had another, you know, edge there, which was writing screenplays and scripts and animation films, or you know, Batman and the Superman animated stuff that I worked on. And then off to those side, those were the three main ones. But I had comics, which was a pretty big stream for a while anyway, and I come back to it off and on. And then I have my, I guess what you would call fiction, nonfiction, and essays that I do from time to time. So those are the main parts of my career. I mean, I've also done plays and poetry, but those are things that I've done sort of in, I don't know, off season, so to speak. So to me, I've always had those things. So those caught on in the 80s where they were making these limited editions, or when they were just special editions, or sometimes they weren't necessarily great special editions in the sense of price and how they were made, but they were editions that were printing something of mine that might not be out there in the mainstream. And after the 80s, early 90s, probably about the middle 90s, the whole idea of short story collections by mainstream publishers didn't collapse, but it didn't disappear, but it did collapse for the most part. And those started going towards more limited editions and specialty publishers. And so a lot of my short story collections that appeared from major publishers at one time, nearly all now appear from smaller publishers. And some of the smaller publishers that I send those things to, or that publish those things, are sort of like, really, they're big publishers in some ways, like Subterranean Press. They're not as big as, say, Little Brown, Mulholland, but they're much bigger than, say, chapbooks and things that a handful of people are doing. And so, you know, it's surprising having all these different tentacles and different, you know, areas where I can go is made my life exciting. It's made, it's given me a lot of markets. When one would disappear, I would go work in another. And then now I'm trying to get into directing films, you know, and I'll be 70 this year, but I'm ready. And you know, I think we would have already been there had it not been for the COVID problem. And so I'm hoping we can reignite that interest, you know, and see if I can end up doing that as well.
Well, if you need an extra.
Yeah, keep it in mind. I will say, I can't say what it is, but I do have some things that are coming out in cinema. Also, if you're a fan of Love, Death, and Robots, they adapted, you know, two of mine the first season, but they did one, The Tall Grass, this season. Yeah, I was happy with it. It's funny because Joe Hill and Stephen King both did a story. I think theirs is called In the Tall Grass. And people say, were you influenced by that? And and mine was actually before theirs. Yeah. So no, I wasn't influenced by that. But and I haven't read those yet. I'd like to. I'm a fan of both of them, but I haven't read either one of. I mean, I haven't read that version by both of them. I'm almost scared to now. I'm thinking, whoa, what if we're similar? Doesn't matter really. You know.
No, it doesn't.
We were on our own.
And you know, yeah, it's like, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun. You have to, you know, something is going to be
nothing.
Yeah, so everything you have.
It's how you do it.
Exactly.
You know what the difference in the writing that I really admire and writing is, when I started out, when I was young, what I was interested in was the plot, the story. I want to know what happened next. I still do. I haven't lost that interest, but at some point I realized that the writers I actually wanted to read or would probably pick up were writers who somehow interjected their personality into the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Ray Bradbury, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Faulkner, you know, Matheson, Charles Beaumont, Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett, James Cain, and all of those writers, to me, they put something of their self into it. And so when I read them, their style pushes out and affects me, you know. And there are some that have that style that for whatever reason I can recognize but doesn't work for me. And there are several like that, several that I appreciate but don't really like. But I'm going to like people who somehow can put themselves into the work instead of writers that just take me from one scene to the other to get to the end. You know, even if it's well plotted, You know, I'm more interested in how it's written. That's not always the case, absolute, but it's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, rereading some of your earlier work now, knowing you and your family, it's very personal, and
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if, unless people are Uber fans, they might know that, but it's, but the thing is too, here's what's so interesting, like that piece that you had written for, was it the Dallas Boring News?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, actually, the piece I wrote, that was the one on the Hell Through the Windshield. That was for Twilight Zone magazine.
Oh, that's perfect. But yeah, I mean, your voice comes through even when you're writing, basically editorial kind of, or
Right.
yeah, no, I think it's a great
Yeah.
gift,
Yeah. I think it is a gift that I stumbled over. I mean, I was trying to find my own voice. There's no doubt that I was making that attempt, but you get in the way of yourself with a lot of things, and eventually, if you're fortunate, you'll stumble into the right room. You'll find the right key and stumble into the right room. And I was fortunate that for me that happened, and I think I honestly believe that the voice in the stories has been the secret to my career. For what career it is, and it's a good one. I'm fortunate, but I don't always have it. Sometimes I'll write a story purposely where I will mute that voice or where I will pull it back because the story is sometimes the story it calls for a different attitude, but the story is so strong I want to write it. That doesn't mean that I'm necessarily accomplished that completely, but I'm able to do it to some degree, and I think it works well for that story. But I wouldn't want to do it all the time. I'm much more happy with and attuned to just writing as myself. But if you become conscious of writing as yourself, then it's no longer writing as yourself. It's writing as it's some sort of parody of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I've done that in a couple of stories. I think I've actually parodied myself, and I don't want to do that because I think like Hemingway got to where that's what he was doing. He was parodying himself in a lot of his middle period work to the end.
Rewarding, I mean, the whole point of art is to take risks. I'd rather, like you said,
is to take risks. That's exactly right. And that's why I try to be me, but I try to find out the me that's now, not the me that was, because I'm always changing. In one ways I'm always the same. In some ways, I mean, I seem to be. I'll read interviews of mine 20 years ago and I sound like the same guy. I pretty much see it the same way. But there are evolutions within, and there are evolutions as a writer. And Philip Jose Farmer, who I love dearly, one of my favorite writers, and I knew a little bit, once told me, he said, well, Joe, what you got to do is you got to climb out on the end and saw the limb off with you sitting on the wrong end. So, because sometimes you got to take chances, And one of the things I've always said, and I truly mean it, is that I would rather read an interesting failure than a bland success.
I absolutely agree with you. In terms of books and films and art, I'd rather see somebody take
everything,
have it flawed than
right.
At least
I mean, it doesn't even have to be flawed, but it has to be brave at times. And and sometimes I just want a comfortable pair of old shoes. I want to sit down and just have something that's kind of familiar that maybe doesn't stretch it too much, because I'm not an absolutist. I just don't believe in that. But I do know that on the whole, what I believe is that the things that excite me the most are the ones where people are either taking chances with their voice, or they're not taking chances with the story at all, but their voice is so fascinating that I don't care. I've read writers like that. Charles Portis is a writer I like a lot because I feel like I have connections with him, because we both probably have connections through Mark Twain. So we're influenced by these other people, but he's still unique. He tells a simple story, but it's not the story. It's the way he writes it and the way those characters are and how they see the world. They're funny without knowing they're funny. And that's what I love about them.
Yeah, I think for this film, it was kind of the next leap of, faith in terms of what I could do. And
Yeah.
yeah, so round two. Can I just
Yeah.
document you
I mean, you know,
over?
it it takes intestinal fortitude to do something that you know may not work, that you may never make a dime from, because you know we all want to make money from it for the simple reason so we can keep doing it.
Yeah.
You know, we can pay our bills, and you know, I'm very much a artist realist. You know, I write for money, but I write for me first.
Right.
And you know, it's more important for me. I write because I can't not do it, and I really want to do it. But I want the money because the money means more people are reading it.
Yeah.
And it means too that I now have money to be able to do the things I want to do to take care of my family, which, you know, most of my family's on their own now, which is great. But, you know, my wife and I want us to be comfortable. I want us to be able to live a comfortable life. You know, nothing exotic or anything like that. But I also want to be able to give to charities. I want to be able to help people when I can. You know, those things they're important. And that's the kind of thing that you get from money. From those, you know, I don't want to live as a bohemian. I don't want to live on the edge where I never know if the next day I'm going to have to, you know, be shitting in the woods and eating berries. I don't want that, you know.
You're like the anti-struggling artist. Like that is something you.
I am the anti-struggling artist. I'm not. I don't want that at all. I've already been that. I've been that, and I didn't love it, you know. And some people say, you know, you write best when you've got all this consternation. No, you don't, or at least I don't. When I sit down, I'm able to get in that zone, and I've needed to. There have been times when, you know, things were falling down around us almost back when we were young, you know, because we didn't have much money and we were trying to do what we could and we were working 2 jobs or what have you. But I would sit down and write and try to, you know, make some semblance of reason come together in the writing, which kind of helped you emotionally, intellectually, you know, in many different ways. But I always felt that I did better when I knew that I could pay the bills, that the water was going to be on, there wouldn't be an interruption in service. You know, I'm not impressed with people who are impressed with how, you know, how close to the bone they can live. I'm just not. That's not my thing, you know.
I mean, you know, everybody should be
Yeah.
able to live a comfortable life. You know,
that's what you want. Yeah, and you know, and
politics.
yeah.
And I know you.
That's what I'm looking for. Right. Well, you know, I think what I want is just the fact that I do want a comfortable life. I want to be able to afford the books I want to read. I like having, you know, be able to watch the movies I want to watch.
Books.
Yeah, many books. I've been getting rid of a lot of them. I've gotten rid of over 1,000 since 2019.
Yeah, but like,
and I've
out the door, you're going to end up with a new book in your hand because, like,
well, you're true. You're right. You're right.
Read,
one thing though is I go to half price and I get rid of 100 and I only come back with 2, so I feel like I'm doing better, you know. And I'm also donating some to certain things. I'm selling some that I don't, you know, think that I want. I'm, you know, making sure that I don't have, you know, 3 or 4 copies of the same book, which is a problem of mine. I would go somewhere and I wanted to read something, I didn't have it, and it was there to buy. I'd buy it and read it, and because I'd read it before, you know, like a collection of stories by, I don't know, Flannery O'Connor, for example. You know, so I've tried to get rid of all those extra copies, and you know, and I got warehouses or storage buildings full of stuff, and I've been emptying one about once a week. I go over, pull things out of it, and you know, plan where it's going to go.
Well, at least you have a lot of book space.
I do. I had some new bookcases built too.
You'd have to.
Yeah, I had to. Yeah, if I had a whole library the size of my house, I probably wouldn't get rid of as much.
Ooh, that sounds great. Although I suppose Karen might not be thrilled with that.
No, she's always been pretty good about that. She has the same feelings for books that I do. I mean, I'm a ferocious reader. And you know, for better or worse, I don't know many people that read as much as I do. I have always tell people I have one superpower, and it's the ability to read fast and to read every word and to relatively retain. I'm not talking, it's not a photographic memory. I don't have anything like that,
No,
but I have a pretty good memory for what I've read.
Yeah. You do.
What's that? I'm sorry.
You do.
Oh.
You have excellent.
Well, I have yeah, and that's it. That's my superpower, is being able to read a lot of books. I saw somewhere, and I don't remember who it was, they're talking about, I'm going to be reading 50 books this year or 100 books this year. And I thought, man, they're fucking around.
Well, I mean, I know it's your joy, so.
It is. It's my pleasure. And I saw a thing. I was reading a Truman Capote interview the other day, and I found one thing where he and I were similar. And that was, he said he could read an average size book in 2 or 3 hours. And that's me.
Wow.
I can sit down, and I used to have days, and I sometimes still do it, where I would say, this is book day. I would get up in the morning, and by the end of the day, I may have read at least 2 books and sometimes 3, and of average size books. And of course, a lot of the books that I read growing up, they were like, the science fiction novels and crime novels, and they were all like 120, 160 pages long. So that was certainly, I could devour a lot of those.
A reading machine, as someone described you in the film, but yeah, I mean, it makes you happy.
Yeah.
You live a pretty happy life, and I thought that
I
was.
live a real happy life.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to document people who are kind and creative and support other artists. So, and
right, I always think about a happy life. The joy of it is that you have to know you live it as happy as you can, because there may be unhappy moments. There may be unhappy times, and that's not what you want to dwell on all the time. Or for me, I try to live in the moment, but I also try to learn from the past and plan for the future, knowing full well that everything is flexible. There's no absolute.
Yeah, I know. The New York street way of thinking about is it could always go bad. It could always.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. It can always go bad. It really can. And so when it's good, enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have a moment to celebrate. This is really exciting.
Right.
And I'm so glad it pleased you and it felt like a gift to you. And I hope lots of people discover you and enjoy all your work.
I do too.
And
it's like
years of reading to catch up.
Yeah. I have a weird career in that people think that I'm struggling because I'm not as well known as Stephen King to them, or I'm just doing gangbusters and that I'm jumping all over the place with money. And the truth of the matter is I'm probably somewhere in the middle or upper middle of that, but creatively I'm really, really content, and financially I'm content. It's not like I need anything.
Yeah, well,
I go all over the world. Karen and I just do pretty much what we want to do. It's not bad.
What a life, and and the nice thing is it's rare that people have really nice lives and are so gracious with other people and helping out. And you guys have supported.
Well, I not only have a nice life, I have a nice family, and we're also supportive. We're supportive of each other and things, and that's a good thing too. I mean, that's the sort of thing you hope for. You look around and you see families that people hate each other or can't stand each other or can't be around each other, and that saddens. I mean, I'm sure that my son and daughter don't want me to move in with them and hang around like, hey, what's for lunch? What's going on?
Well,
but we can be around each other for long periods of time with great happiness.
I've seen them both around you and Karen, and you guys are tight as hell. You love each other. It's a really healthy, nice family. Thanks for letting me.
We think so.
Come and hang.
You bet. Anytime.
I'll keep posted on what's going on if we do a second batch, and if there's anybody you want me to send one to, just let me know. Cool.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My love to the family.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye. I will.
Thank you.